The invitation arrived on a Tuesday cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. My hands trembled as I opened it, reading the words that would bring me face to face with the family I hadn't seen in 7 years. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Emma Catherine Anderson. My sister's wedding. Of course it would be perfect, elaborate, everything she ever dreamed of. Emma had always been the golden child, while I was the disappointment, the one who dared to choose a different path. My name is Olivia Anderson, and at 32, I was being summoned home for the first time since my parents had cut me off for refusing to follow their carefully laid plans for my life. The last time I'd seen them, my father had called me ungrateful, my mother had cried about the shame I brought to the family, and Emma had watched silently as they threw me out. Now here I was standing in front of my childhood home, the sprawling mansion that had felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. The gardens were immaculate as ever, roses blooming in precise rows, everything controlled and perfect, just how my mother liked it. Olivia, my mother's voice cut through the air as she opened the door. No hug, no warm welcome, just that familiar critical gaze. You're late. I checked my watch. I was actually 5 minutes early, but there was no point arguing. Some things never changed. Hello, Mother, I said, forcing a smile. It's been a long time. She ushered me inside, her heels clicking against the marble floors. Yes, well, that was your choice, wasn't it? But Emma insisted you be here for her wedding. Though I must say, your appearance isn't quite what we'd hoped for. I glanced down at my designer suit, worth more than most people's monthly salary. But of course, it wasn't the conservative dress she preferred me in 7 years ago. Now, she continued, leading me to the kitchen where caterers were bustling about. You'll be helping with the arrangements, making sure everything runs smoothly, helping the staff, that sort of thing. The wedding needs to be perfect. I stared at her, the reality of the situation sinking in. They hadn't invited me as a guest. They wanted me to be the help. Of course, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Whatever Emma needs. My mother nodded, satisfied with my compliance. Good. At least you can be useful. Emma will be down shortly. She's been so busy with the wedding plans. Her fiancé Thomas comes from an excellent family, you know. A merger between the companies is already in discussion. Of course it was. Everything in this family had always been about business, appearances, and social climbing. That's why they'd been so furious when I'd refused to marry the son of one of my father's business partners 7 years ago. Instead, I'd walked away from their money, their connections, their suffocating expectations. What they didn't know was how that decision had changed my life. They had no idea that the small tech startup I'd joined back then had grown into one of the most successful companies in the country. They didn't know that I now owned 3 tech firms, that my net worth was more than triple what my father's company was worth. I kept my success quiet, changing my last name professionally to avoid the connection. As far as they knew, I was still the rebellious daughter who'd thrown away her future for nothing. Emma descended the grand staircase like a princess, just as she had when we were children. At 28, she looked exactly like the society bride our mother had always wanted. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect smile. Liv, she exclaimed, embracing me with practiced warmth. I'm so glad you came. Everything has to be just right for the wedding. Congratulations, I said, hugging her back. Thomas must be special. Her smile faltered for just a moment. Oh, he's perfect. Daddy says the merger will secure the company's future, and his family is so well connected. Some things really never did change. I thought about warning her, telling her what it felt like to live your life for other people's expectations. But I could see in her eyes that she'd already accepted her role, just as she had when we were young. The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow night, my mother interrupted. You'll need to be here early to help set up. And please try to dress appropriately. I nodded, already planning what I would wear. Not the conservative dress she wanted, but something that would make it clear I wasn't the same person they'd thrown out 7 years ago. As I drove back to my hotel that evening, I thought about how different my life was now. My penthouse apartment in New York, my successful companies, the respect I'd earned on my own terms. Tomorrow, they'd see glimpses of it, whether they were ready or not. The real question was I ready for them to know the truth? The rehearsal dinner was everything I expected. Elaborate flower arrangements, crystal glasses, and enough tension to suffocate an elephant. I arrived early as instructed, wearing a Channel dress that cost more than my mother's entire wardrobe. The look on her face when I walked in was almost worth the price. That's hardly appropriate for kitchen staff, she sniffed, eyeing my dress with disapproval. I'm not kitchen staff, Mother, I replied calmly. I'm your daughter. My father appeared then, his presence still commanding enough to make the room feel smaller. Olivia, he said, his voice clipped. I trust to be discreet about your situation. We don't meet questions from Thomas's family. I smiled, remembering the meeting I'd had with Thomas's father just last month. He didn't know I was Emma's sister. Few people connected Olivia Anderson with Olivia Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Tech. But he'd certainly been eager to discuss potential partnerships with my companies. Don't worry, Dad, I said. I won't embarrass you. The evening progressed like a carefully choreographed dance. Emma played her part perfectly, laughing at all the right moments, touching Thomas's arm with just the right amount of affection. But I caught the moments when her smile slipped, when she thought no one was watching. During dinner, I overheard Thomas's father talking business with my father. The merger will save Anderson Industries, he was saying. You're lucky Emma's so accommodating. My blood boiled. They were using my sister as a pawn in their business games, just as they tried to use me. The difference was, I'd escaped. Later that night, Emma found me in the kitchen where I was supposedly helping with cleanup. You look different, Liv, she said softly. Happier. I am, I replied. You could be too, you know. You don't have to go through with this. She twisted her engagement ring nervously. It's not that simple. The company's struggling. Dad needs this merger. And what about what you need? I asked. I need to not disappoint them like you did, she snapped, then immediately looked regretful. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said. But you're wrong about one thing. I didn't disappoint them. I disappointed their expectations. There's a difference. The next morning, I had breakfast with Thomas's father at his request. He still had no idea who I really was. Ms. Reynolds, he said, I've been hoping to discuss a potential acquisition. Your tech companies would be a valuable addition to our portfolio. I sipped my coffee, enjoying the irony. That's interesting, I said. I heard you were already planning a merger with Anderson Industries. He waved dismissively. That old dinosaur? We'll strip it for parts once the merger's complete. Henry Anderson doesn't know it yet, but his company won't exist in 6 months. That's why this wedding is so important. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. And Emma? Does she know this? He laughed. The girl? She's just happy to be marrying into our family. Women like her are easily managed. I stood up, my decision made. Mr. Harrison, I should introduce myself properly. I'm Olivia Anderson, Emma's sister, and I think we need to have a very different conversation. The color drained from his face as recognition dawned. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of our conversation. Now, I said, let's talk about what's really going to happen. By that afternoon, news of the canceled merger was spreading through both families like wildfire. Emma found me in the garden, her face a mix of confusion and relief. What did you do? She asked. I handed her the recording. I showed you who Thomas's family really is, I said. The rest is up to you. She listened, her hands shaking. When it was finished, she took off her engagement ring and placed it on the garden table. They're going to be furious, she whispered. Probably, I agreed. But you know what? Sometimes fury is better than a lifetime of regret. That evening, as chaos erupted in both households, I sat in my hotel room and made a phone call that would change everything. My father's company might be struggling, but it wasn't beyond saving, not if it had the right partner. It was time to show my family exactly who I'd become. The morning of Emma's would-be wedding dawned bright and clear. Instead of wedding preparations, both families were in crisis mode. I walked into my father's study, where he sat with his head in his hands, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The company's ruined, he muttered without looking up. Everything I built. Not necessarily, I said, placing a folder on his desk. I have a proposal. He opened it, his eyes widening as he read. Reynolds Tech wants to partner with us. But how? Why would Olivia Reynolds? Because I am Olivia Reynolds, I said quietly. I changed my name when I started my company. I didn't want any connections to the family fortune. I needed to prove I could do it on my own. He stared at me, really seeing me for the first time in years. You're the CEO of Reynolds Tech? I nodded. 3 companies actually, and I'm offering to save Anderson Industries, not through a merger, but a genuine partnership. We'll modernize your infrastructure, integrate new technologies, and create something stronger together. Why? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. After everything. Because you're my family, I said. And because I want to prove that success doesn't have to come at the cost of someone else's happiness. Emma found me later in the garden, where workers were dismantling the wedding decorations. Is it true? She asked. About your companies? Yes, I said. And you know what? I built them by following my own path, not someone else's expectations. She sat beside me, tears in her eyes. I've been so afraid of disappointing them that I almost ruined my life. I took her hand. It's not too late to find your own way. My mother was the last to come around. She found me in the kitchen, where I was supposed to have been helping with the wedding, and stood awkwardly in the doorway. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. Would you have believed me? I countered. Or would you have seen it as another way I was defying your plans? She flinched. I was wrong, Olivia. About so many things. The partnership between Reynolds Tech and Anderson Industries was announced the following week. The business world was shocked to discover that Olivia Reynolds and Olivia Anderson were the same person, but the story only added to my reputation. Emma decided to take some time to figure out what she really wanted. She moved to New York, started therapy, and eventually discovered her own passion for environmental law. Our parents struggled with the changes at first, but seeing both their daughters successful and genuinely happy began to shift their perspective. A year later, we all gathered for another family event, the opening of the Anderson Reynolds Innovation Center. As I cut the ribbon, I caught my father's eye. He nodded, just slightly, but in that nod was everything we'd never been able to say. I'm proud of you, he told me later, not because of your success, but because you had the courage to be yourself. My mother, standing nearby, added softly, we should have seen it sooner. That evening, I stood in my old bedroom, now a guest room, looking out at the garden where I'd spent so many hours dreaming of escape. Emma joined me, looking relaxed and confident in a way she never had before. You know what's funny, she said. They thought making you help with my wedding was a punishment, but it gave you exactly the opportunity you needed to save us all. I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming the person you were meant to be. Now, at family dinners, there are no more discussions of arranged marriages or business mergers. Instead, we talk about dreams and possibilities, about building things that matter. My parents are learning, slowly but surely, that true success isn't measured by social status or bank accounts, but by the courage to live authentically. And me, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, successful on my own terms, helping others find their path, and finally, truly part of a family that sees me for who I am. Sometimes I think about that wedding invitation, about how they tried to diminish me by making me the help. They had no idea they were giving me the perfect stage to show them exactly who I'd become. But more importantly, they had no idea that their attempt to humble me would lead to healing wounds that have festered for years. Sometimes the best endings come from the most unexpected beginnings.
The city bus lurched to a stop in front of my parents' gated community. I could have laughed at the irony. My private helicopter was standing by at the airport, but here I was, following Mom's strict instructions to arrive, like everyone else. ID please, the guard said, barely glancing at me in my simple black turtleneck. I handed over my driver's license. Sarah Martinez, CEO of Quantum Tech Solutions. Not that it mattered here. I was just the family disappointment who couldn't get a real job. My phone buzzed. Emergency board meeting in 2 hours. Fortune 500 acquisition pending. The guard waved me through and I walked the manicured path to our ancestral home, where my siblings' luxury cars already lined the driveway. Look who finally made it, my sister Rachel called from the porch. Still can't afford a car, Sarah? I thought about my fleet of vehicles sitting in my private garage. The bus is environmentally friendly. Right, my brother Michael smirked. That's why you take it. Not because you blew Dad's investment on that tech startup. If they only knew that Dad's grudging $50,000 had multiplied into billions under my leadership. But Mom's rules for the family meeting were clear. No discussing business. Your cousin Andrea just made junior partner, Mom announced as I entered. And she's younger than you. My phone lit up again. Pentagon contract confirmed. White House briefing scheduled. Can't even dress properly, Rachel muttered, eyeing my simple outfit. Actually a hand-tailored European piece that cost more than her monthly salary. The distant sound of helicopter blades made me check my watch. Right on schedule. What's that noise? Michael asked, moving to the window. Probably the hospital helicopter, Mom said dismissively. Now about your career choices, Sarah. My phone buzzed again. Ma'am, the board is assembling. DoD representatives arrived early. At least Andrea has a real office, Mom continued. Where do you work these days, Sarah? Still in that storage unit. I suppressed a smile, thinking of my company's gleaming 60-story headquarters downtown. The one Dad called, that ugly new building ruining the skyline. The helicopter sound grew louder. Speaking of work, Rachel said, adjusting her assistant manager nameplate, my bank is hiring tellers. I could put in a word. The massive black helicopter appeared outside the window, the Quantum Tech logo clearly visible on its side. Must be some emergency at the hospital, Michael mused, squinting at the aircraft. My phone rang, the distinctive tone I'd set for Pentagon calls. Mom shot me a disapproving look. Still can't silence your phone for family time. You should take career advice from Andrea, Rachel pressed. She has her own parking spot at the firm. I glanced at my watch. The board wouldn't wait much longer. Neither would the Joint Chiefs. Ma'am, my security head's voice came through my earpiece. Secretary of Defense is asking for you personally. The helicopter circled lower, its downdraft making the windows rattle. That pilot's flying awfully close, Dad complained, moving to close the curtains. Actually, I said, standing up, they're right where they're supposed to be. What do you mean? Mom asked, just as my phone lit up with urgent messages from 3 different world leaders. The helicopter touched down on the massive lawn, its Quantum Tech logo now unmistakable. That's my ride, I said simply. That's my ride, I said, sliding my phone into my pocket. Your what? Rachel's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. My helicopter. The board meeting starts in an hour. I straightened my simple turtleneck, the one Rachel had mocked, not recognizing the designer label that cost more than her annual salary. Stop joking, Michael scoffed. That's obviously for someone imper. He froze mid-sentence as 2 suited agents entered the room. Ms. Martinez, the lead agent said, the Secretary of Defense is waiting. And the UK Prime Minister has requested a brief call during transit. Mom's face went pale. Secretary of, what is this? Remember that storage unit startup? I smiled, accepting the secure tablet an agent handed me. It's now Quantum Tech Solutions, the company that owns that ugly building downtown. The quantum computing company? Michael's banking expertise finally kicked in. The one that's revolutionizing global finance, defense systems, space technology. I checked another message. Is that one? The company currently worth more than the GDP of several countries. Rachel's assistant manager nameplate suddenly looked very small. But you take the bus, Mom stammered. Because you insisted I arrive like everyone else, I replied. Though my usual transport is a bit different. The helicopter's blades cast rhythmic shadows across the room. Those calls you keep getting. Dad's voice trailed off as he recognized the presidential seal on my secure phone. Are from people who actually understand what I built, I finished. Unlike family members who thought I was wasting my potential. Rachel found her voice first. But at Christmas you said you were working on computer problems. Quantum encryption for NATO is technically a computer problem, I replied, reviewing classified documents on my tablet. So is securing the world's financial systems. Another agent appeared. Ma'am, Beijing is on the secure line. Tell them I'll call back during flight, I said, watching Mom's expression shift from dismissal to dawning realization. That article last week, Michael said slowly, about the tech CEO revolutionizing global defense. That was page 38 of your bank's morning briefing? Yes, that was me. I checked my watch. The same technology your bank just paid billions to implement. The helicopter's shadow swept across the room again as it adjusted position. But Andrea has a corner office, Mom whispered, her worldview crumbling. I have a corner of the planet, I corrected. Those satellites you saw on the news. The ones changing global communications? Those are mine. Dad's hands shook as he reached for the business magazine on the coffee table. The one he'd been bragging about Andrea being mentioned in. My face was on the cover. The quantum breakthrough everyone's talking about, he said, recognition finally hitting. The technology that's worth more money than our entire family has made in 5 generations? I finished. The one you said was a waste of time? Yes. Rachel's phone buzzed. Her bank manager calling about the new quantum security systems being installed. Systems that came from her bus-riding sister's company. Ms. Martinez, another agent interrupted, the Joint Chiefs are assembled. The Joint. Mom's voice failed. Chiefs of Staff, I confirmed, gathering my things. They're much more interested in quantum computing than they are in corner offices or parking spots. The helicopter blades grew louder, emphasizing each word as I continued. So about that teller position, Rachel? The next morning's headlines said it all. Quantum Tech CEO closes historic $300 billion defense contract. Below, a photo of me boarding my helicopter from my parents' lawn had become the talk of their affluent neighborhood. Mom's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Country club friends suddenly remembering they had a third child. Sarah? Oh yes, we always knew she was brilliant. I watched the chaos unfold from my office. The entire top floor of that ugly building Dad had complained about. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of the city, including their gated community that now seemed so small. Your sister Rachel is in the lobby, my assistant announced. Again. And Michael's called 4 times, added my secretary. Something about investment opportunities? I turned from the window where another company helicopter was landing on my private helipad. Tell them both my family office handles all personal investments. They can apply through normal channels. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. Sunday dinner this week? Before I could respond, alerts flashed across my screens. The quantum encryption system had just prevented another global banking crisis. Michael's bank would be calling soon, not knowing their savior was his bus-riding sister. The Prime Minister is holding on line 1, my assistant said. And NASA needs to move up the satellite launch. Tell the PM I'll call back. NASA gets priority. I smiled, remembering Mom's constant comparisons to cousin Andrea's law firm achievements. Wonder what Andrea thought about her clients' security systems being powered by my technology. Dad's message came next. Princess, about that investment I refused. Route all family financial inquiries to legal, I told my team. And schedule the movers. Moving day already? My CFO asked, entering with more contracts. The penthouse is ready, I confirmed. 40 floors above my parents' neighborhood. Perfect view of their house. Rachel's third attempt to reach me flashed on my screen. Her bank was hemorrhaging clients after declining our security upgrade. Ironic, given her teller job offer last week. Should we send a car for the family dinner? My assistant asked. No, I said, watching another helicopter approach. They can take the bus. I hear it's environmentally friendly. The quantum computing servers hummed in the background, processing more money in a second than my siblings would see in their lifetimes. One more thing, I added. Send Mom a photo of my new parking spot. All 18 helipads of it. Below, I could see Rachel's car circling the building again. She'd learn what everyone else had. The sister they made take the bus now controlled the skies. Success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about showing them just how right I'd been, one helicopter ride at a time. The next morning's headlines said it all. Quantum Tech CEO closes historic $300 billion defense contract. Below, a photo of me boarding my helicopter from my parents' lawn had become the talk of their affluent neighborhood. I sat in my private conference room, the entire top floor of that ugly building Dad had complained about. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of their gated community, now looking remarkably small. Your mother's on line 3, my assistant announced. And the country club has called 6 times. The neighbors saw the helicopter. Mom's voice trembled when I finally answered. Why didn't you tell us? I tried. For years. I watched another company helicopter land on one of my private helipads. But you were too busy comparing me to Andrea's law firm job. Speaking of Andrea, Mom continued hopefully, she'd love to discuss representing quantum tech. We already have a legal team. Several, actually. In 12 countries. My quantum servers hummed in the background, processing more money in a minute than Andrea would bill in her lifetime. But we're family, Mom insisted. Funny. That didn't matter when you made me take the bus yesterday. Rachel's message flashed on my screen. Her bank was losing clients after declining our security upgrade. The sister she'd offered a teller position to now controlled their entire digital infrastructure. Sunday dinner? Mom tried again. Your father wants to discuss that investment he turned down. I watched another helicopter approach, carrying the Secretary of Defense. I'll send a car, I replied. Oh, wonderful. We'll pick a nice restaurant. No, I cut in, to take you to the bus stop. I hear it's environmentally friendly.